The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, dedicated to creating access to financial well-being for local people, businesses, and communities. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, a raunchy tale by someone who does not do raunchy things, but in a raunchy setting. We'll speak to Daniel Shar about his show Near Sex for Work, which comes to City Space in East Hampton tomorrow night.
But first, it is a lively political scene in Western Mass this year.
With lots of candidates in many races, and we're doing our part this week by having conversations with each of the folks vying for Northampton's mayoral seat.
Starting right now with the reigning champion.
Which is to say the current mayor running for re-election, Gina Louise Shera.
We did a live drawing on the air where we had people from East Hampton do a drawing of who was going to go in what order for mayoral candidates for Northampton.
For Northampton?
Yeah, it seemed fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do I get to draw for East Hampton?
Well, yeah, I think
Sure.
that makes sense. There's 3 candidates now,
Four.
right?
Four. There's
Yeah.
4 now.
Four now.
Yeah, it's the
Wait.
same.
They have instant runoff, so they're not doing preliminary. Tuesday, September 16th, is the preliminary election for the city of Northampton, and there are a Northampton of candidates running.
This is going to happen the whole
It's going to happen the whole time.
I'm prepared.
Okay.
Including 4 for mayor. This week on the Fabulous 413, we will hear from all 4 candidates. The preliminary will whittle down the field to 2 mayoral candidates, and Gina Louise Shera is the first of our candidates that we will speak to this week. GL, as she is commonly called, is the 45th mayor of the city of Northampton. We will not call her 45. She was elected in November of 2021.
Prior to serving as mayor, she served 4 terms as city councilor, 3 terms as Ward 4 city councilor, and 1 term as city councilor at large. She served as both council vice president and president.
She was previously the communications manager for Pathlight, which was the parent organization for programs like Whole Children, Milestones, which we featured on the show, and Autism Connections. And she is seeking re-election. Mayor GL Shera joins us now.
As does NEPM News Department's Adam Frenier.
Well, hi, it's great to be with you.
It's nice to not talk to you about hockey.
Adam does the voiceover for UMass Hockey. Khalees is the producer of UMass Hockey back at the station.
I'm super happy to be here, but not prepared to talk about hockey.
That's okay. The season doesn't start for another month.
What sport would you like to talk about, GL?
Well, the sport of politics,
Yes,
maybe?
and it has become a sport in Northampton this particular election cycle, and we may get to that as well. But let's talk about why you are wanting to be mayor again. Mayor Musanti, one of the legendary mayors of the city of Northampton, the walking mayor of Northampton, was a very popular mayor and has said that every time you run for mayor, as popular as you are, you will lose fans every single time you run for mayor, to the point where then all of a sudden you are no longer the favored mayor. So why subject yourself to this again?
Well, I do understand what Mayor Musanti is talking about, but it has been the greatest privilege of my life to serve the people of Northampton as a councilor and then as mayor. I fell in love with Northampton when I first drove in on a college tour 35 years ago, and then settled here 20 years ago with my partner to set down roots and start a family. And ever since then, I've been looking for ways to give back to this place that has given so much to me and my family. It's given us this amazing home and really allowed us to have a community that I think, I believe is a bit unique. Not everyone gets to find the kind of home and sense of place as an adult that I feel like I've been able to find in Northampton. So it's been an unbelievable privilege. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done, and the most beautiful thing that I've ever done.
Mayor, let's start talking about the issues. Education funding's been an issue for the last couple of years. You've tried to bolster the school department's budget as best as you can. Still, there are some who believe that there should be even more money that's going into the schools, and that's become a hot button topic in Northampton. What would you say to your critics who say we're not spending enough on education?
Well, I completely understand. So yes, as mayor, I have increased the funding from the city to the Northampton Public Schools by 32%. That is the most that we can trace back, at least in over 50 years, that has been invested in the Northampton Public Schools. In my first year, in my first budget, I increased it by 5.1%. And that was the second largest increase in 15 years. And then I followed it up with 7.4%, 9.8%, and then this year 6.5%. So all told, this is really an historic increase for the Northampton Public Schools. And it's not enough. I mean, we need more school funding across the board everywhere, right? This is a crisis in this country. And in the Commonwealth, I've been saying this for the 12 years that I've been serving, and even before. It was one of the reasons why I ran for council in the first place, is to support public school funding. How we fund public education in this country, I think, is bananas. And we have been underfunding public education forever. And certainly right now, it's in extreme jeopardy with potential cuts from the federal government. So we need more funding. People have heard me say this many times, and it's a bit like a broken record, but more and more people, I think, are joining me in saying that the state really needs to step up. Our Chapter 70 formula and what Northampton gets from Chapter 70 is state aid that you get from the state, has been really stagnant for decades in Northampton, even though, of course, costs have grown tremendously. And the state really needs to do more to support districts. And districts now all across the Commonwealth are having huge deficits. There's an amazing increase in the cost of special education, and that's really made it impossible for a lot of districts. So
let's pause right there because two quick things. One, we passed a millionaire's tax, the so-called fair share amendment. Well, the so-called millionaire's tax. It was called the fair share amendment, which was supposed to better fund all of the schools in the Commonwealth. Have you, as the mayor of Northampton and a school committee member, seen any of that money, and has that helped the bottom line for the Northampton schools as of yet?
So the Fair Share Amendment was for education and transportation.
Right.
A lot of the K through 12 funding has gone towards transportation, which is not something that really benefits Northampton.
You mean busing for kids who are K through 12 in other places?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I think that it has done some remarkable things, and I'm so grateful that we passed this and that we have this additional funding, but I have been disappointed that I don't think that it's been directed towards K through 12 in the way that I believe many of us, including Massachusetts Teachers Association, fought for its passage because we believe that more funding would be directly funneled into our district schools.
And the other thing that you mentioned is that the state is not giving us enough money to continue in the city of Northampton, and the state has been critical of the Northampton schools in response to special education in particular, where there was a report saying that we're not living up to the standards that the state had put forth for kids with special ed needs. How are you and the school committee as mayor going to address this if you're reelected as mayor?
So there's no question that we need to fulfill all IEPs, all 504s, right? So these are different plans that are developed for a child who has additional needs. We absolutely have to follow those. That's the law. It's also our moral obligation to do that. As I've said, these costs have just skyrocketed with special ed. One of the things that I did last year, or 2 years ago, was create a special education stabilization fund for Northampton to be able to directly inject more funds into the Northampton public schools, but particularly to try and help our district with unexpected costs around special ed. That's one of the real challenges that districts have, is that you may have a child who moves into your district or suddenly needs a different service or gets an outside placement mid-year, and you will have a huge increased cost that you hadn't budgeted for. So that's why I thought it was really important to create this stabilization fund to help mitigate that in the Northampton public schools. The report found that there are certain things that we have to work on, and a lot of them are around figuring out how to reallocate resources or just make sure that the resources we have are being directed in the correct way.
And Mayor, I know there are some who have said you should use free cash, which essentially is the city's savings account, to put more money into the schools. What are your thoughts about that? And, as you look at all this, is there an answer to try to make everybody happy here at the school district?
Because if you haven't been following it, critics in the city of Northampton have been saying Northampton is rich and has a lot of money that they're just not using, that they could be using to better fund the schools. So how do you address those critics in regards to what Adam Frenier from the NEPM News Department has asked you, Mayor G.L. Shera?
So in the last 3 years, to be able to get more money and have those large increases in the Northampton public schools, we actually have taken $5 million out of reserve funds. So free cash feeds these reserve funds. So it's not true that we don't use them and they just sit there. We do use them. We use them. There's special designation stabilization funds, and then there's general stabilization, and they all get used. Now, our free cash, like everywhere else, was higher coming out of the pandemic, largely because of ARPA. So federal grants that communities got, that now has to be spent. So last year, all of that has been moved out. And this coming year, our free cash is going to be significantly lower. So when people say we have this huge amount of free cash, It was ARPA funds. It also was funds that we had carried over from the previous year for capital projects. So we are not going to see those levels of free cash anymore. And I will say that you want to generate some amount of free cash. You can't budget exactly for what you expect revenues to be. You need to have some sort of reserve for many reasons. And the Department of Revenue recommends actually that 5 to 7% of your general fund budget be generated in free cash, so surplus at the end of the year. In Northampton, we have kept to a 3 to 5% policy. We're not going to see the levels of free cash that we had before. And one of the reasons is, one of the things that people say is you shouldn't be overestimating revenues, right? You should be using more of those revenues and building them into your budget. And we have been doing that. Particularly this year, we have greatly pushed our revenue estimates to get more money into the budget. And so we're going to see less free cash next year. But free cash, as DOR says, that's one-time money. You can't use it for reoccurring expenses. It is not stable funding for something like salaries.
The schools are a hotbed issue, but so is Picture Main Street, which is an interesting initiative to try and make the streets a little bit more balanced in terms of pedestrian health, city health, and transportation health. Since it is a project that is really heavily divided Northampton, how do you think it's going?
The first thing I want to say is the main impetus for Picture Main Street. So this is a Massachusetts Department of Transportation project. The reason that they are investing $26 million, and I should say that this is actually the #1 ranked project in our region for MassDOT, is because of safety. Our downtown corridor is in the top 5% for accident clusters in the entire Commonwealth. So MassDOT basically said, we need to do something about this, and they are investing a lot of funding for it. But you're right. So it's about safety. It's about accessibility. It will greatly improve accessibility for people who are in wheelchairs, who use mobility devices. We have a very wide Main Street, which makes it really hard for somebody who maybe is moving more slowly or has some sort of device that they use to get across 90 feet of crosswalk. So it's going to be making those crosswalks a lot shorter, a less span to get across. It's going to be making a lot more room on the sidewalks. We all, I think, enjoy outdoor dining. That's something that we've been doing since the pandemic. We build outdoor dining by taking parking spaces. So we build it into the street. What we're going to be doing is building that into the sidewalk infrastructure. It's going to create more space just for people. Northampton likes to express itself, right? So people like to come downtown for rallies and vigils and all sorts of things. And so we're creating more space, particularly in front of City Hall, as a place where people like to come and exercise their First Amendment rights. So we're creating more of a plaza there, because what happens is people come and they spill into the street and it's dangerous. So we're just creating more space for people. We have to adapt to how downtowns have changed, how retail has changed. People need other reasons to come to downtowns. We all have created very comfortable spaces, or many of us have created comfortable spaces in our home during the pandemic, and we need other ways to draw people downtown. So it's really about creating more vibrancy and making sure that people do come to our beautiful downtown and experience our wonderful businesses and our great restaurants. And we need other ways to bring people here. We also are addressing environmental issues. So we're doubling the number of street trees. Downtowns become heat islands. And so we're going to be creating a beautiful shade canopy with double the number of street trees that will be there for generations. They're going to be planted in a way that's safer and more sustainable for these trees. And we are redoing all of the underground infrastructure as well. So we just had a big water main break, not on Main Street, although we've had a couple of those, but elsewhere in the city. This was a water main that's from 1871. So our underground infrastructure is well over 100 years old in many cases and needs to be redone. This is an unbelievable opportunity for Northampton to be able to redo this underground infrastructure that has to be addressed. Also, our stormwater infrastructure is very undersized for the climate crisis that we're experiencing now and the kind of storms that we experience now. So we get to redo this infrastructure, and the city does pay for that, and that's what some of those free cash ARPA funds have been directed towards. But it's at far less expense to the taxpayers, because MassDOT and the state is going to be doing the work to open up the street, and this is all stuff that needs to be redone. If you've been on our sidewalks lately, you know that there's a lot of deferred maintenance on sidewalks. This is a beautiful opportunity to have our sidewalks redone and to get some of that state money that we're always fighting for out here in Western Mass.
What about the parking spots along Main Street? There's dozens of diagonal spots for folks that haven't been there. What becomes of those, and is there adequate enough parking in the downtown area?
So if you've parked in Northampton this summer, then the same amount of spots that we use for outdoor dining are the amount of spots that will be lost for the Picture Main Street project. So for the last few summers, we have already experienced what that parking is going to be like. Angled parking, by the way, is one of the main reasons why we have a large, such a high accident rate. It's not the safest kind of parking, but for some people, it's helpful for them, particularly if you need an accessible space. For some people, your mobility device, you need an angled space to be able to access it. So we are retaining some of that angled parking. And that was one of the first things I did as mayor. Was I had heard, we had gone through a very long public process around this project, over 60 public meetings. And one of the things that I heard were that people were really concerned that we were going to get rid of all of those spaces and they needed them. So one of the first things that I did as mayor was say, okay, we're going to retain this amount of angled parking. We're going to increase the number of accessible spaces we're going to have. And that's going to be a compromise we're going to do for people who are worried about that.
What has been the response to the change in parking time for Northampton? So one of the first things that happened when you came into office was the time of day that parking is metered went from 6 to 10 to 8.
So 10 to 8.
Yeah,
on,
10 to 8.
On Main Street, yes. So that actually was something else where I'd been listening to what businesses had been saying. So the businesses, particularly restaurants, were really concerned about turnover in the evening. And so people would come and park and then not leave, and they felt like their customers weren't able to get parking. And we knew that not a lot of people were actually parking on the street between 8 and 10 anyway in the morning. So we made that adjustment, and it's actually worked really well. Turnover is happening a lot more, and we haven't gotten a lot of complaints about it. So I'm sure that some people don't love it, but it's been a really effective way to help those businesses that are open in the evening have more turnover for their business.
We're speaking with Mayor Gina Louise Shera, who's running for re-election in the preliminary election, which will happen on Tuesday, September 16th. We're currently talking about Picture Main Street, and there have been businesses in downtown Northampton who have been critical of this project. There have been businesses that felt that they may need to do a little adjustment to move where their business currently is, even within the city limits, to be ready for the fact that they're going to rip up Main Street and the construction will take a toll. Downtown Northampton is already in a place where it ebbs and flows. Sometimes there's lots of great vibrant stores and sometimes there's fewer. We've seen the return of the Iron Horse in your time as mayor. We've also seen, some other businesses go by the wayside. There's a proposal out there to say, let's experiment with Picture Main Street. Let's run it as a test model. What do you think about addressing it in that regard? There was a time where we tried reverse diagonal parking in Northampton. We experimented with it. It turned out to be a disaster. And it was good that we did the experiment before we implemented all of that. Should Picture Main Street be run as a test before we really put the shovels in the ground?
Although Amherst seems to make it work, which I am always amazed.
I'm amazed anything works in Amherst half the time, but...
Yes. So this project is an extraordinarily complicated project. It involves multiple intersections. It involves widening sidewalks, reducing crosswalk length, leveling crossings, building out public space, creating protected bike lanes, changing sidewalk grading. There's so much to this project. There is no way to do a real trial run of it that wouldn't take a long time to build and cost an amazing amount of money. So again, this is a state project. That's something that Northampton would have to foot. There's just no way to replicate what this project is going to be. But more importantly, none of these are new concepts. These are all things that are being done in other communities, have been done in other communities with great success, and that have brought a lot of vibrancy back to those areas. It's scary to think that we have to go through this process, but I want to make sure that people understand Main Street's not going to be torn up all at once and you can't access it. There will never be a time when Main Street's not open. This project will be done on one side of the street and done in segments, and then it will be on the other side of the street. So Northampton will be open for business during this entire time, but we've been working really hard to come up with mitigation plans and to help the businesses during this time. So we've created a coalition between the city and the Downtown Northampton Association and the Chamber of Commerce that's called POP, Pardon Our Progress, and we've been working for over a year on plans. There are subcommittees around marketing and public engagement and funding and construction mitigation and business support and economic development. This is an amazing coalition of those three organizations, but also business owners, Thorns Marketplace, other community members. And the city has been able to get $150,000 in grants already towards marketing, not just during the project, but starting now. But I also want to say, like, we need to step up, right? During the pandemic, we stepped up and supported our businesses. And this will be another opportunity for Northampton to really come out and show that you care about our businesses.
More coming up with the current mayor running for re-election, Gina Louise Shera, as we explore the gnarly field of affordable housing, the presence of L3 Harris, and more.
After which we discover how you can become a sought-after actor in adult entertainment without taking your clothes off or doing that thing that people usually turn to those films to see with Daniel Shar's Near Sex for Work.
You're listening to The Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar in Hatfield, offering personalized solar energy solutions and ongoing customer care, proudly serving communities throughout the Pioneer Valley. Northeast-solar.com.
We're speaking with Mayor Gina Louise Shera, who is running for re-election. There's a preliminary election with 4 candidates, all of whom will be on the show this week. That preliminary election in Northampton is Tuesday, September 16th. Another big critique of what's going on in Northampton, and as somebody who worked in Northampton for 20 years, I could not afford to live in Northampton. Yes. Affordable housing and housing. It is not a unique problem to Northampton. It is a problem across the Commonwealth and across the nation.
It is, however, exacerbated in Northampton a little bit.
And sometimes people, or in cities, are victims of their own success, and that's kind of what drives everything up. One of the candidates in particular is making housing, 2 of them, I think, really, frankly, are making housing kind of their marquee issues. How are you going to address further the housing situation in the city of Northampton and make it more affordable in light of the fact that there are one, maybe in particular, landowner, business owner, who also owns a bunch of apartments that in some ways puts a stranglehold on real estate in the city of Northampton?
Well, I would say that housing is also one of my marquee issues.
Okay.
And in the time that I've been mayor, we've been particularly successful at creating affordable, so subsidized affordable housing. We have great partnerships with Valley CDC, the community builders, Habitat for Humanity, who build affordable housing. And since I've been mayor, we've created 282 units. Either there are people are living in those homes or they're in the works of affordable housing. So that's something that's been a partnership that's been really successful. I was actually just with Senator Warren last week at a small roundtable with other mayors talking about housing. She has a bipartisan housing bill. You know, like, housing's a problem if both Republicans and Democrats can agree that there has to be a bill, right? And one of the things that I talked about with her is that, you know, we have subsidized affordable housing is somehow easier right now. And shout out to Northampton, because Northampton is one of the things that I think is really special about it is that in general, the people of Northampton are really supportive of actual affordable housing. But what's harder is market rate housing right now. And we've had a bunch of different projects that have stalled. And first they were stalling because they were waiting for interest rates to come down, then material costs. Now it's just general economic uncertainty. And I think it's a really tough time for people to invest in developing housing and doing development in general. This has been a real critical issue for the governor and the lieutenant governor as well. I've always said that we need to create housing at every level to bring down pricing. We just passed a resolution in support of a rent stabilization bill. I'm very thankful to my council colleagues who allowed me to co-sponsor that council resolution, because that's something that I really support as well. We're seeing sort of predatory rental increases in Northampton and in other communities in Western Mass. When someone rents a place, they should feel like they can afford it and that they can afford to stay there, and that their rent increases should be reasonable. And that also those units will be maintained, which is another issue that I'm hearing a lot from renters, that not only are their units in disrepair, they're terrified to say anything about it because they're worried that they're going to be kicked out. We have a lot of work to do in general in this state around housing. There are a lot of initiatives right now that I'm working hard on, but I will continue to work on affordable housing. There's some really exciting projects that are happening around that.
To follow up on what you just mentioned about the rent stabilization resolution, what can the city do to help people that own homes that are struggling with rising costs, rising taxes, and things like that are maybe considering leaving Northampton because they can't afford to live there any longer?
Yeah, one of the hardest things that I hear from folks is that they feel like they can't afford to stay, but they also can't afford to leave because there are rising housing costs in neighboring communities as well. I've worked very hard to provide whatever tax abatements exist from the state. So we can only, we're only allowed to do what the state allows us. So we've increased all of those as much as we can. And, I encourage people to always check in with my office or the assessor's office and make sure that they're taking advantage of any opportunities that are available to them. I've doubled the amount of senior and veteran tax work-off program participants since I've been mayor, because I know that this is something that people are really struggling with. We've actually reduced the tax rate for a couple years in Northampton, but the values have increased so much. So you don't feel that, right? You feel an increase in your taxes because the value of your home has increased so much. That's something that I take really seriously. And I always offer that people can come talk to us and make sure that they're taking advantage of anything that they can do. And we will keep working on it as best we can.
This might seem like a sidestep, but I have a feeling I'm going to ask this of all the candidates. What exactly is affordable housing? I know, back when I had a certain, income, I would look at what was considered as affordable housing, and I priced out of it, which means I'm right at that cliff where I still have to pay the exorbitant rents because I don't qualify for affordable housing. So there's this interesting gap where affordable housing doesn't apply for you, but you still need it.
Absolutely. And that's actually one of the key areas that we would like to incentivize housing for. So often that's called workforce housing. There's actually an exciting project that was just announced fairly recently, which is the 33 King building. That's the former probate court across from the Hotel Northampton. And that is going to be affordable and workforce housing. We're really trying to figure out how to, through zoning and other ways, how to create more of that middle worker housing, because you're right. As I said, we're doing well on sort of big A subsidized affordable. And there's certainly lots of higher end housing, although still not a lot of supply, which is part of the issue. But that more middle income housing has been a real struggle.
We're speaking with Mayor Gina Louise Scherer, the mayor of Northampton, who's running for re-election. There's a preliminary election between 4 candidates on Tuesday, September 16th. We're going to have all 4 candidates on the show this week. Let's do a little bit of a lightning round there, Mayor G.L. Scherer. The Resilience Hub.
Yes.
It's a building that was purchased by Eric Shore, a church right in downtown Northampton.
It's so pretty on the inside.
But will we ever see the inside? It looks, where are we at that? Is it ever going to open? Was it a mistake to buy that? Was it a mistake to buy that from Eric Shore? And how much is the taxpayer of Northampton going to be on the hook to keep that building open, funded, running when it gets going, if it gets going?
The Community Resilience Hub is a project that I supported as a counselor and then I inherited as mayor. This is something that had been in development for a while, and then during the pandemic, the need was clear. There was a real sense of urgency that we needed to create this place where we can co-locate services for people, and also it will serve as an environmental crisis resilience shelter. And now it will serve to house the Division of Community Care, which we haven't talked about at all. But one of the things that I'm most proud of from my time as mayor is creating the Division of Community Care.
Which is an alternative way of looking at policing that the city of Northampton has implemented.
Yes, it's an alternative to policing. Came out of the Northampton Policing Review Commission. It was one of their top recommendations. And it's housed within public health. And we are unique in that most alternatives people still house in public safety. We have built it into public health, and it's a very different model, and it's been very, very successful. So this is an absolutely critical project. And I'm sorry that it's not open yet, because we are only going to see an increase in need. So we know that between 24 and 25, there's already been a 90% increase in the houseless population in Hampshire County. We know that
90%?
Yes, we know that from the point in time count that happens across the nation every year. That's the preliminary number for Hampshire County. We know that so many funding sources and services are being ripped out by the federal government right now. There's already so much need, and we're just going to see an explosion of need. So I think that this project is absolutely critical. One of the things that's really hard is that there was actually a federal grant specific for resilience hubs. So again, this is not an idea that we came up with. Resilience hubs exist elsewhere, so much so that there was a federal EPA grant specifically for these. And we were very hopeful to get that grant. And within the first few days of President Trump being president, he disappeared that grant.
So, but do you think the building is ever going to open now with this lack of federal support and these problems that we're all encountering with access to money that might have been there previously?
I am committed to keep looking for funding to finish that building and get it started. It's something that's desperately, desperately needed. It should be noted that we haven't used any taxpayer money to purchase it.
Is it true that an excise tax on Northampton residents was used in part to pay for that, or?
So the cannabis mitigation money, which Mayor Narkowitz actually stopped collecting cannabis mitigation, which I think was very smart on his part, because now you're seeing tons of municipalities are being sued by cannabis providers for collecting these fees without proving that there's something to mitigate. Northampton was the first to have adult use cannabis, and so we collected in a short period of time some mitigation fees, and then it stopped. We no longer collect those, so that's part of the funds that were used. But it was also, there was a gift from Smith College, other gifts, and block grant funding as well. So this is a really important project, and it's desperately needed by people, and I am going to work to make it happen.
L3 Harris makes parts for the military industrial complex in the city of Northampton. Do you support their operating there as a business? They do add to the tax base of Northampton. Even if you didn't support it, is there anything a mayor could do to stop them from operating in the city of Northampton? What's your take on L3 Harris?
I completely understand why people are so upset that they operate in Northampton. I'm also deeply uncomfortable that they operate in Northampton. They bought their property and built their plant, millions of dollars building their plant years ago. This was 2 mayors ago. So they own that property. There is not a way for us to be able to stop them from operating. And I know that that's really hard to hear. People were very focused on their business certificate for a while. That's something that the state requires. That's really so that you can go after a business and find out how they operate. That's not something that we could not issue to them. We had to do it. And I really get it. What's happening in Gaza is horrific. And it's deeply upsetting that somewhere in Northampton would contribute in any way. And I know that it's deeply unsatisfying that there's not something we can do to stop it, but they own that plant.
And for those who don't know, there are weekly protests specifically speaking about Gaza at L3 Harris in Northampton. Yeah. My last lightning round question. The tone of this election cycle has been something that I have rarely seen in the city of Northampton, which loves to love. Northampton is known as a liberal progressive town. Everyone's a winner. We all love each other. And yet there have been people who have referred to you, and the folks have kind of come in line of the previous mayor, David Narkowitz, and the mayor before that, Claire Higgins, as an establishment. Blue MAGA, they've even called you and your campaign. What is your take on the tone and tenor of this particular election cycle, Mayor Gina Louise Schara, who's seeking re-election?
So I'm going to tell you, I don't care about tone. I care about respect, and I care about respect because it's needed for collaboration. You don't get anything done unless you can talk to each other with mutual respect. And we need to stick together, people. Like, this is an extraordinary time in our country. Thank God we have this amazing state delegation. We have an amazing federal delegation. We all need to be able to work together. And within the city, we need to be able to work together. So I don't care about tone. They don't have to agree. No one has to agree with me, but we need to be able to have a conversation about it. And we also need to stick to facts. There's been a lot of misinformation, a lot of innuendo that does a disservice to Northampton and to any kind of real conversation about policy and things that need to get done.
We've talked about the ebb and flow of economics and business in downtown Northampton, but part of the problem is some of the larger storefronts that haven't been filled for decades now. Is there something that the city is looking to do to intervene with that? And as an aside, I know they're not all shore properties, but definitely at least a couple of them are. Is there any interest in the city in trying to mitigate how much of the economic real estate that takes up to try and increase vibrancy downtown?
So far, we've tried a carrot approach, right? So we started we became part of a vacant storefront program, which is a state program, which incentivizes entrepreneurs to move into a space that's been vacant for a certain amount of time. And the city kicks in some funds and the state kicks in some funds to help them get that started. I've been reluctant to do more of a punitive approach because My concern is that those certain storefronts that we would be trying to really target, I'm not sure where we would have to set a fine or where we'd have to go with something to make an impact, right? Like some of those businesses have been empty for over a decade. That is millions of dollars in rent. So I'm not sure what kind of economic incentive, negative or positive, we can supply to make that change. But we are looking at some ideas and looking at how we can try and activate some of those spaces that are really, really critical for Northampton.
What's something about being mayor that you've learned over the last 4 years that kind of surprised you?
I mean, I guess it shouldn't surprise me, but that it's really about people. It's like anything, right? So a city is made of people. And so I feel like one of the most important parts of my job is supporting the people who do the work on the ground in Northampton. There are remarkable professionals who work for the city who could work in the private sector and make more money, and they have devoted their careers to the city. And so supporting them is something that's deeply important to me. Also, just how much I love that I get to be at these really beautiful moments in people's lives. That's not something that I really had thought about before I became mayor, but I feel incredibly lucky that I get these windows into Northampton that not everyone gets, and I get to see the remarkable creative things that people are doing. I also get the incredible privilege of shaking graduates' hands at graduation. Just being at those moments is, I think, the thing that I cherish most.
I was hoping you were going to say that the portraits of the dead mayors on the wall talk and give you advice, but
well, I mean,
that would be surprising.
We do play games with them, and if you come, well, I'll make you.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's New England, so there's a lot of ghosts. I feel like that was a beautiful moment to end on.
Well, Mayor Gina Louise Schara, you are running for re-election in the city of Northampton. There's a preliminary election on Tuesday, September 16th. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us here today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's good to see you all.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
Why, thank you.
I almost said, if you had to choose one of the other ones to run against, who do you want to be? But you don't have to answer that question.
I won't be answering that question.
And everybody's going to get a may the odds be ever in your favor. So that
I'm going to neutral reporter mode here.
And thank you to you, Adam, for running here for being part of this conversation.
My pleasure as always.
And we'll be speaking with the other three candidates on the preliminary ballot through the rest of the week. Tomorrow we'll be joined by Dave Dombrowski.
But next, we'll talk to someone who has the privilege of working in the adult film industry with the added bonus of not having to take his clothes off to do so. We'll talk with Daniel Schar about his one-man show, Near Sex for Work, next.
You're listening to The Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
I had a friend once send me, he tried to buy tickets for the show, I guess, while he was at work, and just going to my website, it got blocked.
Yeah, that's what happened to us. So.
Yes.
It's probably good, given the nature of what we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
But your site doesn't actually have anything. We'll get into.
Yeah, if it says porn on the site, then the bots are going to believe it to be porn.
Yes.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. This Wednesday, September 10th, brings a raunchy, hilarious look at the adult industry with Near Sex for Work, a one-man show exploring the roller coaster of climactic twists. He chronicles of comedy writer, actor, and now star of his very own one-man show, Daniel Schar's ridiculous resume, with support from the most sensational videos, audio clips, and images he has amassed along the way and censored for this production, as he found success by being sex work adjacent.
Daniel Schar grew up eager to leave North Carolina, realized journalism wasn't for him at the University of Missouri, devoted himself to sketch and improv in Chicago, and currently enjoys writing comedy in Los Angeles. Prior to becoming one of porn's top and only exclusively non-nude, non-sex extras, Schar wrote and directed the indie feature film Scraps and has sold jokes to The Onion and Funny or Die, done a bit of Conan, and performed solo shows at Comedy Central Stage, SF Sketchfest, St. Louis Fringe Festival, and more. And he joins us now. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Daniel Schar.
Thank you for having me. It is very surreal hearing it reflected back to me that this is the life I've living.
I can only imagine. People know what pornography is. People know what to expect when there's pornography. And I was just talking to Khalees about this earlier. There's a very funny Saturday Night Live sketch written by Julio Torres, who was on our show a couple weeks ago, starring Emma Stone, called The Actress, where she is the non-sex person in this porn that is being filmed as a sketch for Saturday Night Live.
She's basically the person who screams right here in front of my salad.
Got Just say what's in the script.
Oh, I was just trying to access Deirdre.
There's nothing to her. People are just gonna scroll past you so they can get off. She has no past, no future. She exists only to be cheated on. All right? Just say what's in the script. Action.
Jared, I'm getting my nails at the mall. Now teach my godson push-ups right before our wedding, Jared.
Cut. Great. Nice and flat. On to the real stuff. If you don't want to watch, you can sit on a folding chair just outside. I'll call you when it's time for you to catch him in the act.
When they betray me.
I have been sent this sketch so many times, and it is fairly accurate to some productions.
You are Emma Stone in this. They're not watching this for you.
I fully recognize that. I certainly have had plenty of days where that has been the case. I've received the note that you can't be more interesting than the film because I was trying to improvise stuff that I thought was funny, and it apparently was taking away focus from where the director wanted it. But there have been other productions where directors really are, they want the story, they want the details, they want the extra stuff on the sides, and some directors I think value that stuff more than the sex itself. So there are times where it flips, but for the most part, yeah, I'm Emma Stone.
Do you think that you were at some point being sought out because of those moments that you brought to screen?
Absolutely, yeah. I think at this point, I've been doing this for a few years, and most of my work comes from, I would say, a handful of directors who are booking me over and over again because they like what I bring to the table specifically.
Tell me about some of the roles that you have been booked for in this near sex for work career that you have, Daniel Shar.
Oh man, I've been the boyfriend getting cheated on, the husband getting cheated on, a principal. It ranges from aloof and oblivious to very hurt and upset that I'm being wronged like this. To thrilled for my wife that she's able to have some fun while I'm out of town or whatever. So yeah, I'm always just the guy who comes in at the end or at the beginning, or sometimes is there for the entire thing. But yeah, very much an ancillary player to the stars of the show.
How do you get this gig the first time?
Yes, so Craigslist is essentially how I've gotten every job I've had in the adult industry. They all basically were moments where I saw a Craigslist ad, thought this would be funny, and then I've ended up sort of thriving and having these year-long jobs. Starting with my very first one that I talk about in the show is I got hired to work at a sex shop when I was still a virgin, which I told them when I applied that I did that as a joke. And so cut to seeing an ad for an adult film that was looking for background actors, and I was like, this would be funny if I was in like the background of a porn. So I applied, and because of my comedy background, at that point I'd already, I'd been in Chicago doing sketch and improv for like 6 years and living in LA for a couple of years when this opportunity popped up. So they saw my website and they said, we actually have a dialogue role that we think you could maybe do if you'd be okay with that. So I worked as hard as I could. I was like, I really need to act as well as I possibly can. Like that to me would be very funny to bring like my most committed acting to a porn. And it went really well and I had a great time. My co-star was incredibly nice.
Is this a dagger I see before me? Nope. That's not a dagger.
I mean, she might call it dagger or he might call it dagger, but it's not a dagger.
And we are speaking with Daniel Shar, whose one-man show Near Sex for Work is coming to City Space in East Hampton this Wednesday, September 10th.
Do you feel like the quality in scripts that you receive has changed as you've gotten more known for doing this in the industry?
Yes and no. I think that there have been scripts where my name is written into them, and that's been really exciting to see, like that they are from jump being like, it's for him. We got to get him. He's our guy. And I'm also it's a nice place to be where they trust me. These directors that I work with really trust me to put things in my own words. So bringing my comedy writing background and my improv background to every project that I'm a part of, I think I'm pretty good at threading the needle between putting things in my own voice and adding little flourishes without derailing things too much or getting too far afield from what they're looking for.
Jared. I forgive you.
Cut. We'll edit that out. Just give her the meal voucher.
How did this become a one-man show instead of just a solid 15 minutes that you did for stand-up?
when that first scene came out, I had one of my best friends, I had her do sort of a James Lipton style interview. Like, we did a screening
deep inside the actor's studio.
Oh no.
We called it Inside the Porn Side Character Actor Studio. And we screened the episode in full. I sped up and censored the sex parts, but I made everybody watch the entire 30-minute thing that I'm in like 5 minutes of. And the laughs that came from that were unlike any I'd ever really experienced in all my years of doing comedy, just because I realized people were in this unique spot where it was a little titillating and a little uncomfortable and a little out of everyone's comfort zone to be sitting in a room watching pornography with everyone else, but they were also curious about it. And I'm censoring the stuff and like skipping past the stuff. I'm inverting the way everyone does it, which is to fast forward past all the story stuff and watch the the sex. And so flipping it on its head, it was really thrilling, and it also just, that screening was really what sparked the idea to build it out into a full hour.
And now you can see that full hour this Wednesday, September 10th at City Space in East Hampton. We're speaking with Daniel Shar, whose one-man show Near Sex for Work will be there at City Space. It's Near Sex for Work, and you have mentioned you wrote porn, you manage an OnlyFans account, you star, best supporting actor in porn, maybe the most famous best supporting actor in porn at this point, because you're the only one I've ever heard of.
Exactly.
And have you ever been tempted to be actually part of the porn?
Not at all. To me, nothing feels better than laughing with people and making people laugh. And so that gratification is infinitely more fun, and I'm more motivated by that than I ever have been by anything sexual. There's nothing funny or interesting to me about having sex on camera. A bunch of people do that, and they're better at that than I would ever be. And so I don't need to do that. But I feel like I found a unique spot for myself that I'm very excited to be in, because it feels like the perfect confluence of everything I've been doing for the last 15 years. And it's this is perfect. This is right where I want to be, and I get paid pretty well, and I have none of the stress or pressure or physical wear and tear or any of the other ramifications that all these people deal with. So I really do feel like I have the best job in the industry.
Porn can be destructive and addictive and problematic.
Sure.
And also some people feel like if they would never want to be admitting that they are part of the pornography industry. How have you navigated that as a human being going through your everyday life? Does your aunt know that you are porn adjacent and a fully clothed star in pornography?
Yes, I'm very fortunate that my family has been supportive of my entire journey, even when I was working at the sex shop. So I know that other people are not necessarily as lucky, but I've always had people around me who are open-minded and cool and understanding. I mean, this was definitely the most public-facing of all these sex-adjacent jobs that I've had. There was a moment where, in that very first scene, I introduced myself as Daniel Shar. And so it was okay, there's kind of no turning back now. I am forever out in the world on record as a person who's in the sex industry. And, as someone who's trying to also work in mainstream entertainment, I recognize that I may miss out on some opportunities as a result of that. If you Google me, you might find a bunch of porn results. And so I had to come to terms with that and also accept the fact that may be the case. But I guess I view it as a way of weeding out the people that I wouldn't want to work with anyway. Anyone who is closed off to that idea or who would judge or stigmatize anyone in the sex industry, it's okay, then we're probably not going to really get along or work well together anyway. So yeah, I think I've accepted my fate. And I also, a big part of the show to me is, without being too heavy-handed about it, I really am hoping to help destigmatize and humanize everyone involved in the entire sex work ecosystem, because doing it for the last 15 years, I've encountered people of every creed and color and class and everything, people from all walks of life. And it's just sex is a part of our lives. And what I've found is just everyone's just looking for connection. That's the main thing. Working with porn people on a day in, day out basis, it's really the amount of conversations I've heard right before seeing an orgy or whatever, where people are just catching up about like, how are your kids doing? Whatever. Like, they're just people going to work.
There is that
They're
scene
not
in
that
Love
different.
Actually where you see the actors
Yeah.
do it. You know, that's actually a funny little glimpse that many people probably have seen.
I'm really starting to panic about Christmas now.
Yeah, because I'm stuck on my 6-year-old nephew. What do you think of a rocking horse?
Wonder what made you think of that.
Every holiday, celebrate with your family by watching 2 porn actors on Love Actually. Made the mistake of going to see that with my in-laws. So that was interesting.
They're doing the intimacy scene of a larger film.
Yeah.
They're the intimacy doubles.
Coming up, we talk about one of Daniel Shar's standout roles, as well as what working in the adult entertainment industry has changed about his work outside of that field, and about getting a joke in the satirical newspaper The Onion.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM. Has writing porn changed the way that you write jokes?
A little bit. I recently turned in a batch of scripts, and I think I thought more visually than I usually do, because there are what's known as like ad scenes in the biz, where they are looking for things that they can turn into little GIFs at the top of pages to get people to click. So you want those moments, those like very clear visual story moments that are eye-catching. And so, yeah, it forced me to think that way. And also, like, how am I going to keep attention of people who are going to want to click through this or fast forward through this or whatever? Like, what can I do to keep things interesting?
Yeah, it turns out porn, very popular. So
Exactly.
if you're writing with a porn as sort of a background to whatever else you're
That was
doing,
going to be the case.
people might really, really like it. And we're speaking with Daniel Shar, whose one-man show is called Near Sex for Work. He is a fully clothed porn star in several pornographic films, and will bring his one-man show to City Space in East Hampton on Wednesday, September 10th. We mentioned in your intro, Daniel, that you wrote for The Onion and in other great comedy outlets. I am a huge fan of The Onion. Almost daily, I am showing Khalees some headline from The Onion. Do you have a favorite joke that you remember that you wrote for The Onion?
Yes. This was back when it was still, you could get printed copies.
I remember those days. I loved it.
So they had a correction section. Oh, I'm going to butcher the exact wording, but it was something about like correction. Last week's edition of The Onion was scratchable but not sniffable or something like that. It was something very stupid. I was very proud of it, and being able to like have it, like I have a printed copy of it somewhere is like, that's so cool. So my sister went to college at Hampshire. That's my connection to the area.
Nice.
Cool.
And when I visited her, I must have been like 12 or 13 or something, and she took me to some weird Hampshire house party. Like people were doing puppetry. There was like all kinds of crazy stuff happening that I did not understand or really, I wasn't that into it. But at that party, there was one of the Onion's like books that they had put out, and she just kind of handed me that, and that was like one of my early comedy brainworm things that got in there. I was like, whoa, this is cool. I like this a lot. And so to then years later be like, oh my God, I like wrote a joke that's in The Onion and I have it in my hand. It was such a cool, like full circle moment.
That's amazing.
Oh. Someone wrote a role that you played as an incel OBGYN. Like, how does that even happen?
It's creative writing.
This is one where she was like, I thought of you immediately. I was like, I think thanks. I assume you're trusting my abilities. So yeah, it's sort of a pretty legendary person in the industry. This woman, Bree Mills, she's been around for a long time. She's directed a lot of stuff, won a lot of awards, and created one of the main companies, this company Adult Time. And so it was the first feature that she had directed in several years. It was like kind of a comeback project for her. And I believe the story was kind of based on some stuff she'd gone through in real life, but maybe twisted in a way. But it is one of the more dark and twisted projects I've been a part of. It's like a psychological thriller. I am the only person in the cast who's non-sex. It's like there were like 5 or 6 people in the cast. I'm one of the main players because I play this woman's OBGYN. And then, spoiler alert, at the end of the movie, it's revealed that I've kind of puppeteered this entire scheme where I've set up the doula, who is my sister, to like steal away this man and like have them steal the baby that this woman, is pregnant with, the entire thing. But yeah, it's revealed at the end that this guy and I meet in like a men's rights group kind of thing.
Wow.
So I was supposed to be very cold and mean to her and all her appointments. There was a dream sequence that I think is maybe the main reason I received a nomination for this, for best non-sex performance. And I think it might largely be due to this scene where she has a dream involving some orderlies at the hospital, and I'm overseeing the whole thing. And it's one of my favorite days on set because Bree basically handed me a clipboard when I got there and said, your job is to come up with as many outlandish things to say during this sex scene as you can think of. Like, write as many jokes as you want, say whatever you want. Because it was a dream sequence, like all bets were off. And so it was like literally anything goes.
Do you remember any of them? Or any favorites?
One that did not make the edit, unfortunately, that really made me laugh, because I was so mean to her in all of the other appointment scenes. I made it a point to at some point go like, hey, I just want you to know I really like you and I respect you. You're one of my favorite patients, and I'm glad I'm like working with you, or something like that. Like, it was just super off topic, like had nothing to do with the sex that was happening, and I just thought that was so funny as like if this is this woman's psyche and this is her dream and her fantasy, that like this wholesome little thing would sneak in. Unfortunately, the editors didn't fit it in there, but yeah, there's a clip or two from it in the show.
How many films have you been in?
I think I just crossed 100 recently.
Wow.
Whoa.
I mean, a lot of those, I don't know if you would call them films necessarily. They're
cinema
just, like,
is what we prefer to
ad
call
scenes. So yeah, I've done maybe, I don't know how many like features at this point, maybe like 10 or 12. But then if you're including also just like, little 30-minute scenes, I've done over 100.
You have a very, very interesting job, Daniel Shar. We talk to a lot of interesting people, but I don't know if I've ever heard of anyone having a job quite like yours.
This is so cool.
And you can
it's really fun for me. Yeah, I love it.
I bet. And you can find out all about it from the man himself, star of pornography, but fully clothed, non-sex actor Daniel Shar, and his one-man show, Near Sex for Work, which is coming to City Space in East Hampton this Wednesday, September 10th.
I mean, it sounds hilarious.
Yeah.
And definitely don't bring your kids.
No.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. This was super fun.
You can grab tickets for Daniel Shar's Near Sex for Work at cityspaceeasthampton.org.
On the next Fabulous 413, we continue our tour of the 4 Northampton mayoral candidates with Dave Dombrowski.
And Nirvani Williams from the NEPM News Department will join us as well.
We'll also meet the cast and creators of a new opera opening up in Amherst called The Onion.
And celebrate the 25th anniversary of the cult classic at the Triplex Cinema, Psycho Beach Party, with famous actress Lauren Ambrose and Charles Busch. We'll see you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413.
Peace out, y'all.